Have you ever wondered why some organizations just seem to keep getting repeated opportunities, repeated pots of money, sometimes even huge awards from funders? Do you ever wonder what they're doing differently that sets them apart? Well, there's a common element that creates the foundation for a strong grant application. It's the same element that is the foundation for a strong organization of any type. This element is also the one that's often pushed to the side when things get busy. When there's a lot on your plate, when an organization has a lot going on, when a leader just feels overwhelmed by changing circumstances, sometimes this element ends up at the bottom of the pile of things to pay attention to. But it shouldn't be this way, because this element is what sets your applications apart for funders. So what is this element? This element is your organization's culture. Today I'm going to share 3 things with you, because your organization's culture is what makes your organization stand out. Organizations with engaged cultures where people feel included and committed to the work have results that outperform their peers every single time. Numerous studies have shown this. I won't point you to references today, but if you watch some of my other videos, you can find those references. Or if you go online, you can search and find that there are some real benefits to building a strong organizational culture. Today, I'm going to share with you what a strong culture consists of, 3 things that you can do to begin to build a strong culture in your organization, and of course, what a strong culture has to do with winning grant applications. Stay until the end and I'll share with you how I am helping emerging and startup nonprofit organizations with my system that will help them win more grant applications and win them more consistently, giving you the funding that you need as an organization to keep your work going and to move it forward to make a tangible difference in your community. A strong culture is one that is clear. Let's first start with talking about what makes a strong organizational culture. Many people think of an organization's culture and they really think of the organization's financial statements of activities or cash flow, its balance sheet, net change in income from year to year, the external performance measures. But a strong culture is what helps create those strong external performance measures. A strong culture starts with clarity and consistency. When an organization has a strong culture, it's clear on what its mission is and stays focused on that mission first and foremost. Because the organization is clear about its mission, it attracts like-minded people because the people that you're bringing to the organization want to do and be involved in the work that your organization is doing. But here's a couple keys to thinking about what a strong culture looks like. In addition to staying on track and focused on mission, a strong culture does have clear standards and expectations. I like to use the phrase, have high standards, but not unreasonable expectations. Standards and expectations have some similarities, but they're slightly different. Your standard is the metric that somebody has to reach. Let's say your goal is to serve 100 clients in the next 3 months. That's your standard. The expectation is generally that your team would reach or exceed that particular metric. However, life happens and maybe there was a change in circumstance, maybe there was an unusual event, maybe there's a team member out, maybe something else took priority because of a short-term emergency. And so your team was not able to meet that metric of seeing 100 clients in the given time period. In that case, what having high standards but not unreasonable expectations would look like would be like understanding, here was the metric that we set, here's what we hope to achieve. I recognize as a leader that there are these circumstances that prevented us from actually achieving it. We're human and we're going to get back at it next time. Those expectations were reasonable in normal circumstances with all else being equal and things going well. But in an unusual circumstance, holding people to the same expectation isn't necessarily reasonable. You need to have high standards, but not unreasonable expectations. Hold people to a goal, hold people to an expectation that they are going to perform and do well. People generally try to rise to meet that expectation if they are committed to your organization's mission and focused on the work as well. As part of having high standards, but not unreasonable expectations, give people a voice in the process. Engage all levels of the organization, from the lowest paid employee, the frontline employees, middle management, senior leadership, and board members. People who are closest to the daily work often understand the processes, the challenges, and the barriers from a very different perspective than people who are administering or managing work and processes. In order to build strong processes that will lead to results, make sure that people are engaged, that they have input, that they're providing the feedback that your organization needs to build processes that will excel. And when people feel like they have that input, they'll take some ownership of the work as well, creating a cycle in which people want to be engaged in what your organization is doing. Then recognize that people are humans with challenges and situations outside of the workplace. Have those standards and expectations, manage people collectively, but treat people as individuals in that. The best workplaces are the ones that understand, like I said before, that life happens, that situations sometimes emerge that create distractions because it's emotionally personal or difficult or creating some additional barriers. Recognize those things and hold people to expectations and standards that are aligned with and appropriate for the situations that either they themselves personally are dealing with or the organization is facing. Next, reward engagement and autonomy. Reward people for taking ownership of the work that they're doing. Reward people for being committed to going above and beyond. Sometimes in organizations, people get rewarded for political reasons. We see it happen in various sectors of life and all kinds of situations. And sometimes rewards don't really align with what people are doing, what the organization says its mission and focus is. So as you define your organization's mission, focus, and values as part of building that strong organizational culture, make sure that you're rewarding what you state the organization is about. It's about being consistent. It's that consistency with mission, vision, and values. And then finally, set objectives clearly and reward quickly. All of these things will help organizations stay on track, build a strong culture, and be one in which people want to be a part of. It doesn't matter if your organization is large or small. Anytime you have somebody working in a collective or collaborative, more than one person, you're beginning to build a culture. You're beginning to build some standards and expectations of how things are done. Put those things into processes, put those things into guidelines, into company or organizational documents. Decide what your standards, expectations, values are in alignment with your mission so that you can build an organization that goes in the right direction. If you haven't thought deeply about building an organizational culture yet, or what it is and what it looks like, let's start with just some basic questions. I'm going to give you 3 questions just to start thinking about your organizational culture. It starts with intentionality. The first question is, what type of culture do I want to build? Simply deciding and naming that culture can go a long way towards building that culture. The second question is, what are you starting with? Are you starting with 2 people or are you starting with 100 people? Although that smaller group may feel like it requires more work to get things done, there's more day-to-day activity, there's less levels of management and things to do. When you have just a few people, you can set the direction and change the pace very quickly. Whereas when you begin to have a larger group of people, changing the culture takes some more work and intentionality in using levers that create change. So if you start the culture when you're small and set those intentions as to where you want to go before you grow, you can grow the direction you want to go without having to course correct later. So ask what you want to build and ask what you're starting with. Those responses will bring you to different places. You may have to do different things depending on your organizational size and your resources, but taking inventory of what you have towards that culture already will go a long way to helping you think about how to move towards what you want to move towards. And then finally, if you have not already defined your organizational culture, ask the question, what does your team already excel at? If you've built a group of people, maybe a mid-sized team, you have some structure, you have some processes and people in place, but you haven't defined the culture yet, take a look at what your team excels with. It helps to build on what you already have. Build on where people are. Don't try to do a complete 180 degrees and have everybody go in a different direction all of a sudden. Work with what you have. Work with those gifts and skills on your team and build from there. Quick recap. The 3 questions were, what kind of culture do I want to build? What am I starting with? And what does my team already excel at? Finally, and the thing that you're probably waiting for is, what does this have to do with grant applications? Why are we talking about culture when we should be thinking about narrative and budget and character counts and getting everything in by the deadline before the funder needs it? The reason that we're talking about culture is because culture really informs what goes into each and every grant application. Your narrative and your budget are a reflection of your organization's processes, performance, and culture. Your standards show in your budget, your program descriptions and design, your capacity to do more. All of those things are reflected in each application that you submit. The reason that you see some organizations winning multiple applications is because they've built strong culture and processes around the work that they're doing. They're clear on what they're doing, why they're doing it, and they're going in that direction. They work as a team so they know how to get there. See, on the flip side, the risk of not building a strong culture is that your organization promises things in your grant application that it doesn't have the capacity to deliver. If you don't have an engaged culture, then everybody's going their own direction. They're showing up for a paycheck and personal ambitions, but they're not pulling towards the mission and vision of your organization. You may hit some targets sometimes, but there may be more times that you don't hit the targets. Grant applications are always built on trust. The funder who's providing you the resources to execute on whatever it is that you applied for is approving your application based on the trust that is demonstrated within your application. Without that strong organizational culture, it's harder to build that trust because it's harder to build those metrics to hit the goals that you're stating. When you're a strong organization, you're performing and you're consistent in what you say and what you do, and you'll always win more grant applications that way. Right now, I'm working with a small and select group of emerging and startup nonprofits using my proprietary framework to help them grow their skills around grant writing, build capacity, and win more of the applications that are being submitted. I've used this framework to help my clients win millions of dollars in grant funding, even without a track record of winning previously. If you're interested in this program, go to the link in the description to learn more. And of course, if this video is helpful to you, like and subscribe so I can continue making more content that helps you win more grant applications.